Okay, it's me again. Another FIFA video. Again, we're going to talk about the members of FIFA. This time, discussing the FIFA members that joined them after the founders. All of these nations are the ones that joined during the 1900s. There were a total of 8 of them. All happened to be European nations. The 8 teams, 3 of them happened to be World Cup winners. Further 2 happen to be runners-up. Okay, so we start off with Austria, Czechoslovakia, England, Finland, Germany, Hungary, Italy, and Norway. So these 8 nations all joined after the founders during the 1900s. And just like the previous video I did about the founders, I'm going to just briefly talk about their history and how some of these teams, all of these teams performed during the World Cups in the past and during some of the Euros as well. Okay, so let's start off with Austria. Austria was a member of FIFA in 1905. Their best performance at a World Cup was in the 1954 World Cup hosted by Switzerland, where they finished third. After losing to Germany in the semi-finals, 6-1, they managed to pull off a 3-1 victory over Uruguay to finish third at that World Cup. That's the best performance Austria has ever done at a World Cup, and they haven't come close since. They happen to have also hosted a Euros in 2008 with Switzerland. Unfortunately, in that Euros, they didn't make it out of their group. In the previous 2 Euros, they've reached the last 16. Germany. Germany are probably the most successful team in Europe, having won the World Cup 4 times, joint second most times with Italy. They also won the Euros 3 times. Only one team has won the Euros more than them, that's Spain. So, the very first World Cup they won was the 1954 World Cup, where they beat Hungary, who went in as the favourites for that tournament. They managed to beat Hungary 3-2. Germany are also the nation that has been to the most World Cups finals, having been to 8 finals and winning half of them. Like I mentioned, the very first final was in 1954 they was in. Then again in 1966 where they lost to England. In 1974 where they hosted the World Cup and won. In 1982 in Spain where they lost to Italy. In 1986, where unfortunately they lost again, this time to Argentina, but in 1990 they managed to play Argentina again and beat them. Italy were the hosts for that World Cup. In 2002, they played Brazil in South Korea and Japan. Unfortunately, they lost that final, but in 2014, they won the final in Brazil, where they beat Argentina. Argentina and Germany are the 2 nations that have played each other the most out of finals. 3 times they've played each other out of finals. The interesting thing about the 2014 World Cup, other than the fact that they beat Brazil, that was the very first World Cup and only World Cup that Germany was a unified Germany and won the tournament. The previous 3 times that they've won before, they were playing as West Germany. So yeah, at one point in time, there were 3 different football, 3 different nations, football teams that represented Germany, Saarland, West Germany, and East Germany. though the results for Germany now are they mainly go by the FIFA only recognizes West Germany's results as Germany. So Germany is the successor team to West Germany, not East Germany or Saarland. I mentioned Germany did host the World Cup one previously in 1974. Another time they hosted the World Cup was in 2006. This time, again, as a united Germany, this time in 2006, when they hosted that World Cup. Yeah, so at the World Cup, Germany has quite a few records. No, they're mentioned, they're also the only team that's ever been to 3 World Cup finals in a row. Germany's also hosted the Euros 2 times, first time in 1988, and they also hosted the Euros this year in 2024, managing to reach the quarterfinals, being knocked out by the eventual winners of that tournament, Spain. Okay, like I said, it's a lot of history with Germany. But yeah, that's Germany. Now let's move on to Hungary. Hungary, like I mentioned earlier, they played Germany in the 1954 World Cup where they unfortunately lost. Hungary were the favourites of that tournament, and they are, by numbers, they are the best runner-up team ever at a World Cup history. There's been no team that has come close to winning a World Cup that had a better tournament and failed to win than Hungary that year. Also, they did lose a final previously to that. They lost to Italy in 1938. France was the host for that World Cup. Hungary became a member of FIFA in 1907. And now we're going to move on to Italy. Again, arguably one of the strongest teams in Europe, or the strongest team in Europe history-wise. They've also won the World Cup 4 times, like Germany. That's joint, second most. They won the Euros 2 times as well. And they've hosted the World Cup twice. The very first time they hosted the World Cup, it was in 1934, being only the second country to ever host a World Cup, which they managed to win that one. They hosted it again in 1990, being only the second team at that time to host 2 World Cups. Mexico hosted a World Cup twice themselves, the previous tournament to that in 1986. So when Italy hosted the World Cup for the first time in 1934, they became the first European team to host it, and by winning it as well, they became the first European team to win it. They also won the following World Cup in 1938, where France was the hosts. Winning that World Cup, they became the first nation to ever retain the World Cup. The only other team to ever do that since was Brazil. So only 2 teams have ever retained the World Cup. France came close last year. 2 years ago in 2022 World Cup. Argentina as well. Funny enough, they came close themselves in 1990. But yes, no team has ever done that other than Brazil and Italy. Oh, and about both Brazil and Italy, similar to Argentina and Germany, Brazil and Italy has played each other in the finals 2 times, Brazil winning both of those finals in 1970 and again in 1994. Both the World Cups that Brazil happened to beat Italy in, they were both hosted by CONCACAF nations, Mexico, USA. As I mentioned before, Italy has also won the Euros 2 times, most recently the 2021 Euros. Interesting enough, 3 of the 4 teams that Italy had beaten at a World Cup final, they all happen to have been mentioned in this video. Italy beat Czechoslovakia 2-1 in the 1934 World Cup in Italy's home soil. That was after extra time. Again, they went on to beat Hungary 4-2 in France. And then in 1982, Italy beat Germany 3-1, making it the 3rd time they won it. And the most recent time they won the World Cup was in 2006, where they beat one of the founding members, France. That game went to penalties. Italy beat France 5-3. That was only the 2nd World Cup at that time to go to penalties. Italy actually lost the first time the finals went to penalties. That was against Brazil in 1994. That game went 0-0 and was also happened to have been the first goalless World Cup final. So again, like I mentioned, with Germany, Italy's got a lot of history. Both Italy and Germany are the strongest nations in Europe. They got the strongest history when it comes to the World Cup, both winning it 4 times, both reaching plenty of finals. At least they've been to a final with each other once as well. Strong teams. The only team that has won more World Cups than both of them happen to be Brazil. Okay, now let's go on to the next country, and that is Czechoslovakia. Now, Czechoslovakia no longer, how do I say this now? They are independent countries now, Czech Republic and Slovakia. So they are now independent nations, right? But at one point, they played together for quite some time. And at one point in time, a very, very strong team in 34, the 2nd World Cup final. They were the runners up. And then again in 1962, they were the runners up against Brazil. Since 93, they became 2 independent nations. But together, they did win a Euros in 1976. FIFA recognizes both Czech Republic and Slovakia as the successor team to Czechoslovakia. Since playing independently, both nations have qualified for a World Cup at least once. Unfortunately, they haven't made it that far, not either team. Okay, now we're going to talk about one of the home nations. Now, the home nations are England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Wales. We are going to discuss England. Now, England are the first and only one of the home nations to ever win and host the World Cup. They won the World Cup in 1966. England became a FIFA member in 1906, being the first home nation to be part of FIFA. England also hosted the Euros in 1996, and the final of the 2021 Euros was played at Wembley Stadium, London. England hasn't won a Euros, but they came close in the last two tournaments, losing in the finals to both Italy and in 2021, and this year to Spain. Yeah. England are the third nation to win the World Cup at their home turf, beating Germany 4-2 in the final. Okay, now the next nation we're going to discuss is Finland. Unfortunately, Finland has never made it to the finals of a World Cup, never reached qualified for them. But they did qualify for the Euros in 2021. They couldn't get out of their group stage. And now finally, Norway. Norway has reached the last 16 of two World Cups. Now, the first one was in 1938, and considering that the very first, the 1934 and 38 World Cups had no group stage, it was only 16 teams. That's technically the first round. So Norway played Italy in the first round, last 16 in 1938, and they lost to Italy in that one. But in 1998, they managed to get to the last 16 at that World Cup final, which had a group stage in. Now, however, Norway has made it to the Euros as well. In 2000s, in Euro 2000s, they were in a group stage. They managed to qualify for the Euros, but again, unfortunately, they couldn't get out of the group. So, yeah. And that's Norway. Now, those were all 8 members of FIFA who joined after the founders in the 1900s. So, named all of them. Now, the next time I do a video like this will most likely be next month. And then I'll be discussing, brief discussing all the members that have joined FIFA in the 1910s. From this point, though, forward, I'll be doing more in-depth video of each member that has joined FIFA. Again, like I said earlier in other video, I will start off with the founding members. So most likely I'm going to do a video on France first and then Switzerland. And it's just be adding a little bit more detail to those teams, those countries, and how they joined FIFA and their relationship with FIFA from when they joined and to how their relationship is with FIFA at this point in time. Okay. Thanks for listening, watching, and I appreciate it. Yeah. Enjoy.